Okay, let's get to some of this. Now, I had a different article prepped for this, but this literally broke at 7:08 p.m., very shortly before we came on. So let's do this right here. Beautiful. Vermont man charged with attempted murder for shootings of Palestinian students. Jason J. Eaton, 48, of Burlington, was charged with shooting 3 college students of Palestinian descent on Saturday outside the building where the police said he lives. A 48-year-old Vermont man was charged on Monday with 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder in the weekend shooting of 3 young men of Palestinian descent on a Burlington street, a violent episode that stunned the small city. As investigators sought to determine whether the shooting could be classified as a hate crime, local officials called the attack on the 3 men, college students who were visiting for Thanksgiving, one of the most shocking events in Burlington's history, and a grave setback for a city that strives to be welcoming. Whether or not it was a hate crime by the law, there is no question it was a hateful act, Chief John Murad of the Burlington Police said at a news conference on Monday afternoon. The suspect pleaded not guilty on Monday and was being held without bail. He appeared in court through a remote video link from jail and did not speak during the brief hearing except to thank the judge. If convicted, he can face life in prison. The 3 young men, all 20, had been staying at the home of an uncle of one of them and had gone out for a walk at 6:30 p.m. The police said Mr. Eaton approached the 3 friends outside the apartment building where he lives on North Prospect Street and without speaking, pulled out a handgun and started shooting about 2 yards away. So, look, I mean, this was pretty obviously a hate crime. I mean, it was a random act. There was no preceding altercation. There's no reason to believe that this man knew any of these 3 guys. These 3 guys were all from out of town. And so, obviously you have to let the system play out. But from the looks of this was pretty clearly a racially motivated incident. And so I want to go to one other exhibit here because we've heard a lot in recent weeks about how unsafe a lot of Jewish students are feeling on college campuses because of all the microaggressions that have been thrown their way by the scary Free Palestine protests that have been in their space. Meanwhile, now you have 3 guys shot. 1 guy was shot in the spine. So one of them is in pretty serious condition. Obviously, we hope to God that he pulls through. The other 2 are expected to pull through. But just an absolutely horrific incident. But I want to go to a video that Aaron Mate posted on his Twitter because on CNN, the talk is still about the quote-unquote anti-Semitism on college campuses, so much so that they want to censor TikTok now. Now they're actually talking about censoring TikTok because there's too much pro-Palestinian sentiment, or as they would say, anti-Jewish hate on the platform. So let's go to this conversation here. Mind you, this is in the wake of, could you imagine what they would be talking about if a Muslim guy gunned down 3 Jews on the street right now?
That would be nonstop, 24/7.
That would be nonstop, wall-to-wall coverage. Yeah, exactly. Now, in the wake of this horrible incident, here's Dana Bash talking to Senator Chris Murphy. I think I got the sound hooked up right. Let me know if it comes through.
Senator, we have seen an alarming spike in anti-Semitism, hate against Jews across the United States, but particularly on college campuses. You also sit on the Senate committee that deals with education. What's gone so wrong on America's college campuses that you have students openly applauding the terrorist killings of 1,200 or more civilians?
Yeah, listen, I'm all for free speech on our campuses, but I've been very disappointed at the response of many of our university officials. There's a direct line between some of the most vicious anti-Semitism speech happening on our campus and threats of violence to synagogues and to Jewish communities.
Oh, there's a direct line between the anti-Semitism on campuses and threats of violence in Jewish communities. What about all of the genocidal rhetoric out of media heads, out of the IDF that are broadcasted on outlets like CNN with very, very minimal pushback at the start, now barely more than minimal pushback 6 weeks and 14,000 corpses later? Again, what responsibility do those forces bear for the attempted murder of 3 Muslim Palestinian students in Burlington, Vermont? But let's go to the rest of this video, because he kind of pivots from that topic to the broader topic of we need to just shut down these ideas in general by censoring the very platforms on which they spread.
I ultimately, think we need to sort of think really hard about the way in which our young people are receiving information about this conflict. We need to hold accountable the social media sites, in particular TikTok, which is just full of virulent pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic material. The college campuses need to have a better means of accountability for this kind of hate speech. But we also have to recognize that these young people are getting their information from somewhere, often from a Chinese-controlled social media platform
that's right.
that has
That's China
trying to turn America against each other. And one of the means they may be doing that is trying to promote a lot of pretty hateful and divisive material about the conflict in Gaza.
You have accounts like Jackson Hinkle and Jake Shields that have gone mega viral in the wake of October 7th because they have been posting a lot of the horrible violence that has been perpetrated against the people of Gaza over these past 6 weeks. But notice they're not as threatened by Twitter as they are by TikTok, because Elon Musk is a pain in the ass. He's a headache for them, there's no doubt. But at the end of the day, they can bring him to heel pretty easily. Don't forget, he just went to Israel.
Yeah.
A conversation just went viral. Him talking to Netanyahu. It's pretty easy to make Elon Musk their bitch at the end of the day. The Chinese, not so easy, right? And so now they're trying to put out there it's China's fault? You're actually going to blame the Chinese for the fact that young people are now spreading pro-Palestinian, or as they call it, hateful anti-Israeli propaganda. Again, their words, not mine. It's just so ludicrous and so just overtly fascistic. I mean, these are fascists. If this isn't fascism, what is? You're trying to shut down a platform using this sort of xenophobic trope, because don't forget, they could shut down X as well, and some idiots like Keith Olbermann have chirped about doing that. But notice you haven't heard language like that coming from Washington, because they know they can bring Elon under control at the end of the day, as they've pretty much proven in the last 24 hours or so. TikTok is a different animal because it's Chinese. Oh, this is a foreign influence operation. Young people would be on board with genocide if it weren't for those Chinese putting ideas in their heads.
Let's follow through with what they're saying, Keaton. Just hypothetically, like, what do we think it would result in? Like, if they shut down TikTok, or if they severely restricted it, like what do they think? They think that's going to turn? They're going to go, oh, I didn't get the latest picture from Palestine, so now I'm pro-Israel. Like, what do they think is going to result in that? I'm just curious to know. I'll be curious to ask. That would be the question I would ask, is like, what do you think is going to happen if that was to happen? But another thing that comes to mind with this sort of story and what he said in the interview there is that it's so bizarre. It's such a exercise in like a word salad thinking, the way, because they're having to add more and more layers of restriction, anti-democratic sort of things to our system in order to control the narrative, and the ways that they're coming up with sort of describing, taking away democracy, misinformation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just very curious in what other sort of level, because they're gonna have to take it to a higher level than just, oh, this is misinformation for the people who are pro-Palestinian. They're going to have to take it to another level. And I'm curious, what could that be? I know they're going to surprise me. And right now I'm not thinking how terrible it could be. Whatever I think, I know it'll be worse, basically. And that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good question. It's an interesting thought. It's a question I couldn't really answer because one thing that I think three old wise men that we are here on this panel, we don't realize how big TikTok actually is. Like TikTok is a massive social media platform. I mean, young people are on that thing the way we used to be on Facebook when it first came out. Remember when Facebook first came out?
Yeah.
Everybody was on it.
Yeah,
That's the way TikTok is now with these young people. They are on that thing all day, every day in absolutely massive numbers. And I do think there is a chance that they will, at the very least, throttle it or censor it brutally. They already have tried censoring it quite a bit. But because, there seems to be bipartisan anti-China consensus, at least around, their perceived influence on this issue, they could take action against TikTok. And at that point, it does create a very interesting question of what's next, because these young people are going to get information out somewhere. Facebook has been atrocious in terms of censorship on this issue. Instagram, same thing, obviously same parent company. Exactly. That's very popular with young people too, but they have not led anything. I mean, they've just been horrible on this. Twitter is probably the place where they would go, because Elon has been better than Facebook on this. Like Twitter's been better than Facebook, but as you can see, they've got him in their grips now too. So, and look, this is why we say all the time that we need to build and really commit to free speech tech platforms like Substack and like Rumble. I know it's a pain in the ass. I know Rumble's tech is shoddy. They were having problems this afternoon. I tried to upload a couple videos. I couldn't fucking do it. Jimmy had a problem getting his live stream going at the same time I was having a problem uploading. So I know it's a pain in the ass. I know it's rickety. But that's the only answer. Ultimately, the only answer is to invest in hardline pro-free speech tech platforms because because every other asshole who runs one of these major tech platforms seems like can be bought, can be influenced. It seems like Elon can be brought under control when push comes to shove. But young people need social media. They need that fix. They're going to get it somewhere. There's going to be demand for it. Now, I think this is what kind of you were asking me, CJ, past the point of censoring the big platforms, how do they crack down on the alt tech platforms? Like, how do they crack down on sites like Rumble? We know France has already banned Rumble, right? Like, how do they go ahead and do that? That requires a broader effort because now you have to start going at the internet service providers themselves. I mean, now you're talking real Orwell shit. Now you're talking real totalitarianism. They might go there too if they have to. I mean, there's no saying they won't.
Man, we're here, gentlemen. We're here, and it's just this is so crazy to me. Go ahead, kid. I'm just
the thing is, what's been concerning me is eventually, I hope I'm wrong about this. I don't want to say it, but I have been having this fear of one day, all of us go ahead and check out our YouTube platforms and all of our social medias, and it's locked out because it can be done. I mean, individually, I know I've helped out a lot of our fellow colleagues and you guys yourselves, like when you've got hit with the YouTube guidelines and the censorship. And I know young people, like for a lot of people who are maybe addicted or use TikTok, whatever, because again, we were all young ones too, and we were all on social media, and people said, well, we're addicted to this too, but people need social media. And I think if young people see just how powerful the censorship machine truly is, maybe we could see a more vocal reaction of people demanding and protecting the First Amendment and free speech. So there's a lot of things to take away from this, but it's also frightening with the amount of power the establishment can do to silence and suppress. I mean, there was at one point the Hunter Biden laptop story that was censored on Facebook and Twitter, for example. You couldn't share that story. If you tried, you were locked out of your own account. And thankfully, the Twitter files, and then to an extent, Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's show admitted the same thing that Twitter was doing, Facebook was doing as well. So we have to start building it up and look at alternative platforms, but there's always going to be the establishment push to silence outside thinking. And if you're going to try and stand up against the narrative, get ready for that jackboot. And it's only going to get progressively worse unless people wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, we're all in this together. We can't have our voices silenced on this, because if they're going to silence us on this issue, they get silenced on the next issue and the next issue afterwards. And wait, should we trust our corporate overlords? Do they have our best interest? And the answer is no, they don't. They never did. It's all about power and control and silent, obedient consent. And since corporate media lost and I will say this, corporate media lost its official round against the internet when people started abandoning CNN and MSNBC. Why do you think CNN and MSNBC bullied their way onto YouTube and all the other social media platforms? Because they were losing the eyeballs, they were losing the viewers, and the neoliberal establishment machine couldn't control the narrative because people got tired of corporate television and cable news. People got tired of it. They wanted something different. And so the establishment is going to try and maintain its power any which way it can. But just like that infamous quote from Star Wars, the more you squeeze your power, the more systems will fall out of your grasp.